Berkeley, 30 years old, sitting alone at an upscale restaurant on his birthday, staring at the shocking text from his parents. The devastating words, "You're not our priority right now," glowing on his phone screen while two empty seats mock him. The waiter approaches with a birthday cake, as Berkeley makes a life-altering decision that will change his family dynamic forever. Before I dive into what happened that night and the aftermath that followed, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should care the most. I guess to understand why that text message hit me so hard, you need to know a bit about my relationship with my parents. Growing up, we were inseparable. My dad would take me fishing every Sunday, and my mom never missed a single baseball game. They were my heroes. We weren't rich, but they made sure I never felt like I was missing out on anything. Birthday celebrations were special in our house. My mom would always wake me up with pancakes shaped like whatever age I was turning. My dad would hide small gifts around the house for me to find throughout the day. It was our tradition, something I cherished. Things began to change gradually after I landed my job at TechSphere. I had worked hard to get there. 4 years of computer science at State University, countless all-nighters, and 3 internships later, I was finally a software engineer with a salary that made all those struggles worth it. I remember calling my parents immediately after receiving the offer letter. My mom cried. My dad kept saying how proud he was. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. 6 months into my new job, I got a call from my dad. His voice was different, strained. He and Mom were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments. The recession had hit his construction business hard, and they were facing foreclosure. Without hesitation, I offered to help. It seemed like the natural thing to do. They had supported me my entire life. Now it was my turn to support them. I drove to their house that weekend with my first substantial bonus check. Sitting at the kitchen table where I had done my homework for years, I wrote out a check to cover their missed payments. The relief on their faces was all the thanks I needed. But I didn't stop there. I set up automatic payments for their mortgage directly from my account. It was a significant portion of my monthly income, but I figured I could live without the luxury apartment I had been eyeing. That was 5 years ago. Since then, I've been paying their mortgage in full every month. When they needed a new roof, I covered it. When their car broke down, I helped them finance a new one. When my mom needed dental surgery not covered by insurance, I paid for it without question. I even postponed my plans to start my own tech company because I couldn't risk the financial instability it might bring when they depended on me. The truth is, I never minded helping them. They were my parents, and in my mind, that's what family does. But over the last 2 years, I started noticing a shift in their behavior. My calls went unanswered more often. Family dinners became less frequent. When we did get together, they seemed distracted, constantly checking their phones or bringing up plans with their new friends from the country club I was also paying for. Still, I kept up the support. Every month, without fail, the mortgage payment left my account. I continued to fund their lifestyle while living in a modest apartment, driving a practical car instead of the Tesla I could actually afford. I chose to believe they were just enjoying their retirement, that they deserved to have fun after years of hard work. For my 30th birthday, I wanted to reconnect. I made reservations at the Silver Spoon, their favorite restaurant in the city. It was expensive, but this was a milestone birthday, and I wanted to share it with the 2 people who meant the most to me. I called them 3 weeks in advance to make sure they marked their calendars. My mom sounded excited, promising they wouldn't miss it for the world. I even bought small gifts for them, which seems ridiculous now considering it was my birthday. A vintage fishing lure for my dad that I found at an antique store, reminiscent of the one he lost on our last trip together. A delicate silver bracelet for my mom with a charm that matched one she had loved and worn until it broke when I was a teenager. I wrapped them carefully, excited to see their faces when they opened them. The day of my birthday, I left work early to get ready. I put on my best suit, the one I reserve for client meetings and special occasions. I arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes early, wanting to make sure everything was perfect. The hostess led me to the corner table I had specifically requested, with a view of the city skyline. I placed the small wrapped gifts by their place settings and ordered a bottle of their favorite champagne to be chilled and ready for their arrival. Then I waited, with no idea that this birthday would become a turning point in my life. 7 o'clock came and went. I checked my watch repeatedly, telling myself they were just caught in traffic. Los Angeles roads can be unpredictable, after all. The waitress came by twice to ask if I wanted to order. I smiled politely and said I was waiting for 2 more guests. She nodded sympathetically, refilling my water glass. By 7:30, I sent a text. Just checking in. Restaurant is getting busy. Everything okay? No response. At 7:45, I called my mom's cell. Straight to voicemail. Then my dad's. Same result. An uncomfortable feeling began to settle in my stomach, but I pushed it away. They were probably just running late and forgot to charge their phones. It had happened before. 8 o'clock. The tables around me were filled with laughing people, celebrating, enjoying their evenings. The waitress returned with that look, the one that says, "I feel sorry for you," sitting alone on what is clearly supposed to be a special night. I ordered an appetizer to save face, something to pick at while I continued to wait. 8:15. My phone buzzed. Finally, a text from my mom. "Running late. Start without us." Relief washed over me. They were coming. I ordered a second appetizer, one I knew they would enjoy when they arrived. The champagne was opened, poured into 3 flutes. I took small sips from mine, wanting to save the proper toast for when they got there. 8:45. Another text. "Traffic is terrible. Might be a while." I frowned at this. Traffic shouldn't be bad at this hour, not in their direction. But I nodded to myself, sent back a quick, "No problem, take your time," and continued to wait. 9:15. The waitress was no longer making eye contact. Other diners were stealing glances at me, the man sitting alone at a table for 3 with unopened gifts and a half-empty bottle of champagne. The humiliation was beginning to seep in, but I kept checking my phone, willing it to buzz with news of their imminent arrival. 9:30. The text that changed everything. "Sorry, Berkeley. We're at the Andersons' game night. Lost track of time. You're not our priority right now. Can we reschedule?" I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting. "You're not our priority right now." 7 words that cut deeper than any knife. 7 words that summarized what I had been refusing to see for years. I sat there, stunned, as the reality of my relationship with my parents crystallized before me. Just as this devastating realization washed over me, the restaurant lights dimmed. To my horror, I saw the waitstaff approaching with a small cake, a single candle flickering on top. The hostess had noted it was my birthday when I made the reservation. They began to sing, drawing the attention of every diner in the restaurant. There I sat, a 30-year-old man, alone on his birthday, being serenaded by strangers, while the 2 empty chairs across from me screamed of rejection. My cheeks burned with embarrassment as I forced a smile, thanked them, and quickly blew out the candle before anyone could see the moisture gathering in my eyes. "Would you like us to box this up for you?" the waitress asked gently. "No, thank you," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just the check, please." I paid the bill, leaving a generous tip to compensate for occupying a table for nearly 3 hours with minimal orders. I gathered the unopened gifts, left the champagne, and walked out with as much dignity as I could muster. The drive home was a blur. The city lights streaked past my windows as I replayed the text in my mind. "You're not our priority right now." Each time I thought it, the pain dulled a little, replaced by something else, something harder, colder. By the time I parked in front of my apartment building, the hurt had transformed into resolve. For years I had prioritized my parents above everything else in my life. I had sacrificed my own comfort, my dreams, my financial security for theirs. And tonight, they couldn't even be bothered to show up for my birthday dinner. As I unlocked my door, my phone buzzed again. Another text from my mom. Hope you're not upset. The Andersons just got a new hot tub. Having a blast. Love you. No apology. No recognition of what they had done. Just a casual dismissal of the plans we had made weeks ago, plans for my 30th birthday. That was the moment I knew something had to change. Standing in my apartment that night, surrounded by framed family photos that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else's life, I began to think about all the sacrifices I had made for my parents over the years. My childhood wasn't easy financially. Dad's construction business was always feast or famine. Some months we had steak dinners. Others we ate ramen noodles for a week straight. Mom worked part-time as a receptionist at a dental office, but her income barely covered groceries. Despite their struggles, they always made sure I had what I needed for school and extracurricular activities. When it came time for college, they sat me down at the kitchen table and explained they had no savings for my education. Their eyes were filled with guilt and disappointment. I reassured them it was okay, that I would figure it out, and I did. I took out loans for tuition and worked 3 part-time jobs to cover my living expenses. Mornings at a coffee shop near campus, evenings at the university library, and weekends doing freelance web design for local businesses. I barely slept those 4 years. There were nights I would doze off in the library, only to be woken by the security guard at closing time. I missed parties, spring breaks, and most of the social aspects of college life. But I graduated with honors and minimal debt thanks to those jobs and a scholarship I earned in my junior year. The job at TechSphere came with a starting salary that seemed astronomical to me after years of counting every penny. Suddenly, I could afford to eat at restaurants without checking the prices. I could buy new clothes without waiting for sales. I could breathe. Then came that phone call about their mortgage. I remember looking at my bank account that day. I had just started to build some savings, a cushion of financial security I had never experienced before. Taking on their mortgage payments would delay my own dreams of buying a home, but I didn't hesitate. They were my parents. That decision set a precedent. Over the next 5 years, their financial emergencies became my financial emergencies. When Dad lost his job after the construction company downsized, I covered their living expenses for 6 months until he found another position, one that paid significantly less. When Mom needed surgery for a condition that had been bothering her for years, I paid the $20,000 bill because their insurance wouldn't cover it. I kept a spreadsheet of all these expenses, not because I expected repayment, but because I needed to adjust my own budget accordingly. The numbers added up quickly. In 5 years, I had given them over $200,000, not including the monthly mortgage payments of $2,200. This financial support came with personal sacrifices. The year after I started paying their mortgage, I was offered a position at a promising startup. The salary would have been a slight cut, but the equity could have been worth millions if the company succeeded. I turned it down because I couldn't risk my steady income when my parents depended on it. That company went public last year. The equity I would have received is now worth over $3 million. There were smaller sacrifices too. The trips not taken, the experiences postponed. Friends invited me to a group vacation in Japan. I declined because I had just paid for my parents' new roof. A colleague wanted me to invest in his side business. I couldn't because my emergency fund was depleted after covering my mom's dental work. 3 months ago, my car started having problems. It was 10 years old with over 150,000 miles. The mechanic recommended replacing it rather than continuing to sink money into repairs. I researched for weeks, test drove several models, and finally decided on a Tesla Model 3. It was a splurge, but one I could afford if I budgeted carefully for a few months. The day before I planned to make the purchase, my parents called. Their refrigerator had died, and they needed $4,000 for a new one, plus some extra to replace the food they had lost. I transferred the money immediately and bought a used Honda instead. Never once did they suggest paying me back. Never once did they acknowledge the opportunities I was sacrificing. It was expected, not appreciated. When I visited their house, I would see new furniture, upgraded appliances, a recently landscaped backyard. My mom would show off her new jewelry or designer handbag, oblivious to the fact that I was wearing the same watch I had owned since college, carrying a briefcase that was falling apart at the seams. Last Christmas, they surprised me with a coffee maker. A $50 coffee maker, purchased with my own money. Meanwhile, I had funded their 2-week cruise to Alaska earlier that year. The imbalance was striking, but I ignored it because that's what you do for family. At least, that's what I thought family meant. The irony is that my friends saw it clearly. My best friend Ryan had been telling me for years that I was being taken advantage of. "They treat you like an ATM, not a son," he said after I canceled our weekend hiking trip to help my parents with yet another financial crisis. I defended them, made excuses. They were getting older. They had worked hard all their lives. They deserved to enjoy their retirement. But sitting in my apartment after that birthday dinner, staring at the gifts I had bought them still wrapped in silver paper, I couldn't deny the truth anymore. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my recent bank statements. The mortgage payment for their house had just gone through 3 days ago. $2,200, the same as every month for the past 5 years. Out of curiosity, I opened my social media accounts. There they were, my parents, smiling in photos posted just 2 hours ago. They were at the Andersons' house, all right. But it wasn't just a casual game night. It was a full-blown party. My mom was holding a glass of champagne. My dad had his arm around Mr. Anderson by a brand new hot tub. The caption read, "Friday night fun with our best friends. Living our best life. Living their best life. With my money." While I sat alone in a restaurant on my birthday, as if on cue, my phone buzzed with another text. It was from my dad this time. "Need to talk to you about increasing our monthly allowance. Property taxes went up. Can you send an extra $500 this month?" No mention of my birthday, no acknowledgement of standing me up, just another request for money. That was the moment everything became crystal clear. I had been supporting my parents financially for years, sacrificing my own dreams and comfort for theirs, and they couldn't even be bothered to show up for my birthday dinner. Instead, they were partying with friends, buying new things, living a lifestyle beyond their means because they knew I would foot the bill. The realization was like a physical weight lifting from my shoulders. For years, I had carried the burden of their financial security, believing it was my duty as their son. But in that moment, I understood that duty goes both ways. Respect goes both ways. Love goes both ways. And for too long, I had been the only one giving. It was time for that to change. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My entire worldview had been shattered in the span of a few hours. The parents I thought I knew, the ones who had cheered at my baseball games and nursed me through chickenpox, had revealed themselves to be something else entirely. People who could dismiss their only child on his birthday with a casual text message. People who could ask for more money in the same breath. Around 3 a.m, I found myself pulling out boxes of old photographs, pictures of family vacations, holiday gatherings, graduation ceremonies. My parents beaming with pride as I received my diploma. The 3 of us hugging outside my first apartment after they helped me move in. Images of a family that seemed so genuine, so loving. Had it all been an illusion? Or had something fundamental changed when I became financially successful? I picked up a recent photo taken at their house during a barbecue last summer. My parents standing in front of their newly renovated patio, glasses raised in a toast. The patio I had paid for. The glasses filled with wine I had purchased. Even their clothes had been bought with money I provided. It was like looking at strangers wearing familiar faces. My laptop was still open on the coffee table, the bank statement showing the mortgage payment staring back at me. $2,200. Every month. For 5 years. That's $132,000 just in mortgage payments, not counting all the extras. With that money, I could have bought my own house, started my own business, invested in my future. Instead, I had invested in theirs. And what had that investment yielded? Empty seats at my birthday dinner and a text message that kept replaying in my mind. "You're not our priority right now." A notification popped up on my screen. The next mortgage payment was scheduled for automatic transfer in 28 days. The sight of it sparked something in me, a question I had never allowed myself to ask before. What if I stopped paying? The thought was both terrifying and liberating. I had been conditioned to believe that supporting my parents was my responsibility, my duty as a good son. But what kind of parents treated their child the way they had treated me tonight? I opened my social media again and scrolled further through their recent posts. There were photos from weekend trips I knew nothing about, expensive restaurants, new golf clubs for my dad, a spa day for my mom, all while I was working 60-hour weeks to maintain the income that supported their lifestyle. One post particularly caught my eye. My mom posing next to a brand new leather sectional sofa in their living room. The caption read, "Finally replaced that old couch. Living room makeover complete." The date was just 2 weeks after they had called me, claiming they needed money for property taxes. There had been no property tax increase. It was a lie, designed to extract more money from their personal ATM. From me. As dawn broke, casting long shadows across my apartment, another text came through. My mom again. Almost forgot. "Happy birthday, honey. Hope you had a nice dinner. By the way, the Homeowners Association is increasing their fees next month. We'll need to talk about adjusting our budget." Our budget. As if we were financial partners. As if they had any part in earning the money they so freely spent. That was it. The final straw. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt and disappointment crystallized into resolve. I had been enabling their behavior for years, and it was time to stop. I opened my laptop and navigated to the mortgage company's website. My finger hovered over the button to cancel the automatic payment. Was I really considering this? They could lose their house, my childhood home. But then again, was it really my childhood home anymore? They had renovated every room, replaced every piece of furniture. The house I grew up in existed only in my memories. Still, this was a major decision. I needed to think it through carefully. Consider all angles. I wouldn't act on emotion alone. I closed the laptop without making any changes and took a shower, hoping the water would clear my head. As I got dressed, I decided to give myself the day to think, to plan. This wouldn't be an impulsive reaction to one bad night. It would be a calculated response to years of being taken for granted. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. This required my full attention. I made coffee and sat at my small kitchen table with a legal pad, listing out every financial contribution I had made to my parents over the past 5 years. The mortgage payments, the renovations, the medical bills, the vacations, the monthly transfers labeled as spending money. Next to this, I listed what I had received in return. Birthday texts, Christmas presents worth a fraction of what I had given, occasional dinners where they spent the entire time talking about their friends or complaining about expenses. The imbalance was staggering when laid out in black and white. Not just financially, but emotionally. They had taken and taken, while giving almost nothing in return. Around noon, my phone rang. It was my mom. I let it go to voicemail, not ready to speak with her yet. Her message was brief. "Hi, honey, just checking in. Did you get my text about the HOA fees? Call me back when you can." No mention of missing my birthday dinner. No apology. Just another financial request. That was when I knew what I needed to do. I opened my laptop again and wrote a letter to my parents. It took several drafts to get the tone right. I didn't want it to be angry or accusatory, just clear and firm. I printed it out and read it over one last time. Mom and Dad, last night, I sat alone at the Silver Spoon for nearly 3 hours waiting for you to arrive for my birthday dinner. Instead, I received a text saying I wasn't your priority. That message clarified something I've been unwilling to see for a long time. Our relationship has become one-sided. For 5 years, I have prioritized your financial needs above my own. I've paid your mortgage, funded your renovations, covered your medical bills, and financed your lifestyle. I did this willingly because I love you and believed that's what family does for each other. But family also shows up. Family remembers birthdays. Family doesn't lie about needing money for property taxes when it's really for new furniture. I've come to a difficult decision. Effective immediately, I will no longer be making your mortgage payments or providing any additional financial support. If I'm not a priority in your life, then I can't continue to make you the priority in mine. I've included a record of all financial support I've provided over the past 5 years. Please review it and consider what kind of relationship we want to have moving forward. Berkeley. I folded the letter and placed it in an envelope along with the printed spreadsheet of my financial contributions. Next to it, I placed the small wrapped gifts I had intended to give them at dinner. The note was signed. The decision was made. Now, I just had to deliver it. The next morning, I woke up with unexpected clarity. The anger and hurt were still there, but they had been channeled into something productive. A plan. The first step was to consult with professionals before taking any irreversible actions. I called Bradley Coleman, my financial advisor, and scheduled an emergency meeting for that afternoon. Then I contacted a lawyer who specialized in family financial matters. Both agreed to see me on short notice, perhaps sensing the urgency in my voice. Bradley's office was in a sleek downtown high-rise. As I explained my situation, his expression remained neutral, professional, but I caught a flash of surprise when I detailed the extent of my financial support. Berkeley, from a purely financial perspective, what you've been doing is unsustainable, he said after reviewing my documents. You're compromising your own future to subsidize their lifestyle. What are the implications if I stop the mortgage payments? I asked. He leaned back in his chair. The mortgage is in their name, correct? You've just been making the payments? I nodded. Then legally, you have no obligation to continue. They would be responsible for finding another way to pay, or they could face foreclosure. But there's no legal mechanism to force you to keep paying a mortgage that isn't in your name. It was both a relief and terrifying to hear it stated so plainly. I had the right to stop, but the consequences for my parents could be severe. My meeting with the lawyer, Maria Sanchez, covered similar ground but with more attention to protecting myself. I recommend sending a formal letter to both your parents and the mortgage company, she advised. Make it clear that you are discontinuing voluntary payments that you have been making as gifts, not out of legal obligation. This creates a paper trail, should there be any disputes later. She helped me draft the letter to the mortgage company, carefully worded to explain that I would no longer be making payments on behalf of my parents starting with the next billing cycle. I signed it in her office, and she promised to send it by certified mail that same day. Next was the banking side of things. I visited my bank in person and spoke with the manager about removing the automatic payment from my account. He asked several times if I was sure, perhaps sensing the weight of the decision. I assured him I was. While at the bank, I also opened a new savings account. The money that would have gone to my parents' mortgage would now go there instead, my future fund. By late afternoon, all the financial arrangements had been made. Now came the harder part. Delivering my letter to my parents. I knew they had their weekly dinner with friends on Thursday evenings. They wouldn't be home until at least 9. This gave me a window to deliver the letter without having to face them immediately. I wasn't avoiding confrontation, but I wanted them to process my decision before we spoke. I drove to their house around 7. The neighborhood was quiet, suburban, peaceful. Large homes with manicured lawns lined the street. Their house stood out with its freshly painted exterior and new landscaping, all paid for by me. Using my key, I entered quietly, though there was no one to hear me. The interior was immaculate, filled with high-end furniture and decorative items that had not been there when I was growing up. I walked through the living room, noting the new leather sectional that had replaced property tax money. In the kitchen, I saw the granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that had been installed last year. Another renovation I had funded. I placed the envelope with my letter on the kitchen island, where they would be sure to see it when they returned. Next to it, I left the wrapped gifts I had brought to the restaurant. Finally, I placed my house key beside the envelope. A symbolic gesture, but an important one. Before leaving, I took one last look around. This house contained so many memories, but it no longer felt like home. It was a monument to my parents' entitlement and my own willingness to be used. As I pulled out of the driveway, I felt a mix of emotions: sadness for what had been lost, anxiety about what would come next, but primarily, I felt relief. For the first time in years, I had put myself first. I had established a boundary that should have been in place long ago. Back at my apartment, I took one additional step. I blocked my parents' numbers on my phone. Not permanently, but I needed time to process without being bombarded by their reactions, which I anticipated would be swift and dramatic. I also sent emails to several family members, explaining briefly that I was taking some time away from my parents to reassess our relationship. I didn't go into details but wanted to get ahead of whatever narrative my parents might spin. My final action that night was setting up an automatic email response to my parents' addresses. I am taking some time to reflect on our relationship. I will reach out when I'm ready to talk. Please respect this boundary. Then I waited. Not for long. The next morning, my phone notification showed 42 missed calls from various numbers. My parents, trying to reach me from friends' phones after discovering theirs, were blocked. There were also dozens of text messages from unfamiliar numbers, all with the same urgent tone: call your parents immediately. I had expected this. What I hadn't expected was how quickly word would spread through their social circle. By midday, my work phone was ringing with calls from their friends, people I barely knew. I didn't answer. My email inbox was filling up too. Messages from my parents, increasingly desperate in tone. Berkeley, what is this letter? Call us immediately. This isn't funny. You can't just stop paying our mortgage. What are we supposed to do? We need to talk about this like adults. Call us now. Is this because of the dinner? We said we were sorry. This is a massive overreaction. Had they actually apologized? I scrolled back through their texts. Not a single sorry to be found. Around 2 in the afternoon, my office door opened without a knock. My father stood there, red-faced and agitated. How he had gotten past building security, I didn't know. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, waving my letter. I remained seated, outwardly calm despite my racing heart. "I think the letter is quite clear, Dad. You can't do this to us. We're your parents." "Lower your voice," I said quietly. "This is my workplace." He stepped closer to my desk. "We'll lose the house. Is that what you want? To see your parents homeless?" "You have options," I replied. "You can get jobs. You can downsize. You can sell some of the things I've paid for over the years. The new furniture, Mom's jewelry, your golf clubs." His face paled slightly. He hadn't expected me to be so direct, so unmoved by his emotional appeal. "What's happened to you?" he asked, his tone shifting from anger to confusion. "This isn't like you. What happened is I sat alone at a restaurant on my 30th birthday while you and Mom partied with friends. What happened is I received a text saying I wasn't a priority. What happened is I finally realized how one-sided our relationship has become." He started to speak, but I held up a hand. "I'm not doing this here. I've said what I needed to say in the letter. I've made my decision. Now I need you to leave before I call security." For a moment, I thought he might argue further. Instead, he turned and walked out without another word. The confrontation had been brief but decisive. I had held my ground. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work tasks and ignored messages. By the time I returned home that evening, my parents had escalated their efforts. They had contacted every family member, every mutual friend. My aunt called to beg me to reconsider. My cousin texted asking what had happened to make me turn on family. Even my old college roommate reached out, confused by a call he had received from my mother. I responded to none of it. This was between my parents and me. I wouldn't be manipulated through third parties. That night, as I was preparing for bed, A final email came through from my mother. Berkeley, we've just received a letter from the mortgage company confirming that you've stopped payments. Please, we need to talk about this. We don't understand why you're doing this to us. We're your parents. We gave you life. We raised you. How can you abandon us like this? Still no apology. Still no acknowledgement of their behavior. Just guilt and emotional manipulation. I closed my laptop without replying. For the first time in 5 years, I fell asleep without the weight of my parents' financial needs on my shoulders. It was a strange feeling, liberating, empowering. Whatever came next, I knew I had made the right decision. Not just for my bank account, but for my self-respect. The next week was a storm of attempted contacts from my parents. The 42 missed calls on that first morning were just the beginning. By day 3, they had tried reaching me from 17 different phone numbers. Friends, neighbors, distant relatives, anyone whose phone they could borrow. The voicemails evolved in a predictable pattern. First came anger. How dare you do this to us? Then panic. The mortgage company called. We don't have the money to make the payment. Then attempts at guilt. After all we've done for you. Is this how you repay us? Finally, desperation. Please, Berkeley, we need you. We're sorry if we hurt you. Too little, too late. The apology, when it finally came, was conditional. We're sorry if we hurt you. Not, we're sorry we hurt you. The difference was subtle, but significant. The text messages followed a similar progression. Early ones were accusatory and demanding. Turn your phone on and call us right now. Later ones became pleading. Please just talk to us. We can work this out. I maintained my silence, not out of cruelty, but because I needed time to process my emotions without their influence. Years of patterns wouldn't change overnight, and I wasn't going to be drawn back into their manipulation tactics. On day 4, my father showed up at my workplace again. This time, security was prepared and didn't allow him past the lobby. I watched from my office window as he argued with the guards before finally leaving. It was painful to see, but necessary. Boundaries had to be established and maintained. That same day, I received an email notification from the mortgage company. They had contacted my parents about the missed payment. The formal process had begun. In 30 days, if no payment was made, they would be officially in default. My mother's response was to ramp up the emotional appeals. She sent a long email detailing all the sacrifices they had made for me growing up. The vacations they hadn't taken so I could go to summer camp. The car they had driven for years without replacing so I could have braces. The second jobs they had worked to pay for my school supplies. It was a powerful narrative, one that had influenced me for years, but now I saw it for what it was, a manipulation tool. Yes, they had made sacrifices for me as a child. That's what parents are supposed to do. It doesn't create a lifetime debt that children must repay with interest. By the end of the week, my extended family had gotten fully involved. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Some supported my parents unconditionally. How could you do this to them? Others were more measured, trying to understand both sides. Can you at least talk to them? One unexpected ally emerged. My father's brother, Uncle Jim. He called me directly and asked to meet for coffee. Unlike the others, he didn't begin with accusations or demands. I've watched this situation develop for years, he said as we sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe. Your parents have been taking advantage of your generosity. I tried to talk to your dad about it once. He got defensive, said you were happy to help, that it was your idea. I was surprised by his insight and support. Why didn't you say something to me? He sighed. I should have, but it wasn't my place. You're an adult, and I thought you'd set boundaries when you were ready. I'm glad you finally have. His validation meant more than I expected. For so long, I had questioned whether I was overreacting, whether I was failing in my filial duties. Hearing someone else, especially someone from my parents' generation, confirm that their behavior was inappropriate was deeply reassuring. What do you think I should do now? I asked him. "Stand your ground," he said without hesitation. "They need to understand that relationships have to be reciprocal. They can't treat you like an ATM and expect you to keep giving." I followed his advice. For the next week, I maintained my distance. I went to work, came home, lived my life. Gradually, the barrage of messages decreased. My parents were running out of energy, or perhaps tactics. Then, on day 12, a letter arrived at my apartment. Not an email, not a text, but an actual handwritten letter from my father. I recognized his neat, architectural script on the envelope. I opened it with trepidation, half expecting more guilt trips or demands. Instead, I found something unexpected: honesty. "Berkeley, I've written and rewritten this letter a dozen times, trying to find the right words. There are no right words, only the truth. We were wrong. Not just about missing your birthday dinner, but about how we've treated you these past few years. We've taken your support for granted. Worse, we've come to expect it as our due. Your mother and I have spent the past 2 weeks facing hard realities. Without your financial support, we can't maintain our current lifestyle. The house payment is due in 18 days, and we don't have the money. We've been living beyond our means because you made it possible. I won't ask you to resume payments. That would be unfair after how we've treated you. Instead, I'm asking for a chance to talk, person to person, not as a father expecting obedience, but as someone who has wronged you and wants to make it right. We're selling the golf club memberships. Your mother is returning the jewelry she bought last month. It's a start, but not enough. We'll likely need to sell the house and downsize significantly. These are consequences of our actions, not your responsibility. I see that now. When you're ready, I hope you'll call. Until then, know that I am truly sorry for the pain we've caused you." Dad, I read the letter 3 times. The tone was different from anything I had received from my father in years. There was no manipulation, no guilt trip, just accountability. Was it genuine, or another tactic to regain access to my financial support? I couldn't be sure. People don't change overnight, but it was a start, a potential opening for a new kind of relationship. I folded the letter and put it away. I wasn't ready to respond yet, but for the first time since that birthday dinner, I felt a glimmer of hope that something positive might eventually emerge from this painful situation. The next day, I received a similar letter from my mother. Her tone was more emotional but equally contrite. She acknowledged her role in taking advantage of my generosity and expressed genuine remorse for missing my birthday dinner. "I keep thinking about you sitting there alone," she wrote, "waiting for us while we were so thoughtlessly enjoying ourselves elsewhere. The image breaks my heart. You deserved better from us. You always have." These letters marked a turning point, not an immediate resolution, but the beginning of a potential path forward. My parents were, at last, seeing me as a person with feelings and boundaries, not just a source of financial support. 2 weeks after delivering my letter, I was ready to take the next step. I unblocked their numbers and sent a brief text. "I received your letters. I'm willing to talk. Coffee shop on Main Street, Saturday at 10 a.m. Their response was immediate. "We'll be there. Thank you." 2 simple words that had been notably absent from our relationship for years. Thank you. Saturday morning arrived with a mix of anxiety and cautious hope. I chose the coffee shop carefully, a neutral location, public enough to discourage dramatic scenes but quiet enough for a meaningful conversation. I arrived 15 minutes early to collect my thoughts. My parents walked in precisely at 10, looking noticeably different from when I had last seen them. My father's designer polo had been replaced by a simple button-down shirt I recognized from years ago. My mother wore minimal jewelry, none of the expensive pieces I had funded. These small details suggested their letters hadn't been empty words. They approached my table hesitantly, as if unsure of their welcome. I stood and gestured to the chairs across from me. No hugs, no pretense of normalcy. We were here to rebuild, not to paper over the cracks. "Thank you for meeting us," my father began once we were seated with our coffees. His voice was subdued, lacking the authoritative tone I had grown accustomed to. "I needed time to think," I replied simply. My mother nodded. "We understand. And we appreciate you giving us this chance." There was an awkward pause. For people who had known each other all my life, we were suddenly strangers, unsure how to navigate this new terrain. "I want to be clear about something," I said finally. "This meeting isn't about the money. It's about respect and reciprocity, about recognizing that relationships can't be one-sided." They both nodded, exchanging a glance. "We've had a lot of time to reflect these past 2 weeks," my father said. "We've talked more honestly than we have in years, about our behavior, about how we've treated you." "And?" I prompted. "And we were wrong," my mother said, her eyes meeting mine directly. "We became entitled. We started seeing your success as our retirement plan. We forgot that you're not just our financial support. You're our son." The honesty was refreshing. For the first time in years, they were speaking to me without an agenda, without a handout. "The mortgage company called yesterday," my father continued. "We've put the house on the market. It's the right thing to do. We can't afford it without your help, and we shouldn't expect your help." I was surprised by this concrete step. "Where will you go?" "We've been looking at apartments," my mother said. "Something within our actual means. Your Uncle Jim has offered to help us move." The mention of my uncle made me smile slightly. "He's been supportive. He told us some hard truths," my father admitted. "Made us see how we've been taking advantage of you for years." We talked for over 2 hours that morning. Really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. They shared their fears about aging and financial insecurity, which had driven some of their behavior. I explained how their actions had made me feel used and unappreciated. There were difficult moments. My mother cried when I described sitting alone at the restaurant on my birthday. My father's voice broke when he admitted how much they had come to depend on my financial support, not just for necessities but for luxuries they hadn't earned. By the time our coffee cups were empty, we had reached an understanding. Not a complete resolution, but a starting point. They would take responsibility for their financial future. I would consider helping with a portion of their housing costs once they had downsized to something reasonable, but with clear conditions and boundaries. "I need to know that I'm valued as your son, not as your bank account," I said as we prepared to leave. "That means showing up when it matters. It means remembering that relationships require give and take." They nodded, solemn but determined. "We want to earn back your trust," my father said. "However long that takes." Over the following months, they proved their sincerity through actions, not just words. They sold the house and moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment. My father took a part-time job as a consultant for a small construction firm. My mother started working at a local boutique 3 days a week. I did end up helping them with a portion of their rent, but it was a fraction of what I had been paying for their mortgage. More importantly, it was an amount I chose freely, not one they expected or demanded. Our relationship slowly transformed. We established new traditions based on time together rather than financial transactions. Sunday dinners at my apartment, monthly movie nights, a group chat where we shared our daily lives. 3 months after our coffee shop meeting, I invited them to dinner at the Silver Spoon, a do-over of my birthday celebration. This time, they arrived 30 minutes early, bearing thoughtful gifts and genuine smiles. As we shared a meal and conversation, I realized how much healthier our relationship had become. They asked about my work, my friends, my interests. Not once did they mention money or request help with expenses. When the check came, my father insisted on paying, even though I could see him wince slightly at the price. That night marked a true turning point. Not perfect, but real progress. My experience led me to start an online support group for adult children navigating financial boundaries with parents. To my surprise, hundreds joined within the first month. My story resonated with so many others who had found themselves in similar situations, unsure how to balance filial responsibility with personal boundaries. 1 year after that fateful birthday dinner, I held a gathering at my new condo. Yes, I had finally purchased my own place. My parents were there, along with friends and other family members. As we celebrated, my mother pulled me aside. "I want you to know how proud I am of you," she said quietly. "Not because of what you can provide for us, but because of who you are. You had the courage to stand up for yourself when we were wrong. That took real strength." Her words meant more than any gift could have. They showed me that our relationship had truly evolved, that they finally saw me as I was, not as what I could give them. The journey wasn't easy. There were setbacks and difficult conversations along the way. Old patterns sometimes resurfaced and needed to be addressed. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted. We had found a balance that respected everyone's needs and boundaries. Looking back now, I can see that sending that letter was the most loving thing I could have done. Not just for myself, but for my parents too. It forced us all to confront uncomfortable truths and build something healthier in their place. If you're in a similar situation, feeling taken for granted or financially exploited by family members, remember this. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. True family supports each other emotionally as well as financially. And sometimes, the most caring action is to say no when patterns have become harmful. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle it? What was the outcome? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to establish healthy boundaries, even with the people closest to them. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, respect in relationships should always go both ways.